The Man of Steel gets unleashed. This is your look at the new Beast Kingdom Dynamic Action Hero DAH-013, the Justice League Superman. With a complete revision and upgrade to the Dynamic Action Heroes series, Beast Kingdom has recreated arguably the most powerful member from the Justice League, the superhuman son of Krypton, Superman. The action figure revisits Superman in his iconic Battle Rage mode, accurately recreating the explosive moment of Superman dispensing pure rage as seen in the latest Justice League movie. No detail has been spared as the official Henry Cavill body cast scans from Warner Brothers have been used to outline Superman's muscular physique, creating a feature list that makes the Dynamic Action Heroes 1/9 scale action figure feel as close to reality as possible. Before we get a closer look at the last son of Krypton, the first thing we're going to do is figure out how tall the new Dynamic Action Hero Justice League Superman stands. And like with Batman, on average, these Dynamic Action Heroes stand at 8 inches. Sometimes a little shorter, but on average, like Wonder Woman I think is a little shorter, but on average they're about an 8-inch tall figure. And Superman here is no exception. The figure stands at 8 inches exactly. Switching that to centimeters, then you're looking at the figure standing 20.4, almost 20.5 centimeters tall. And seeing as we just recently had a look at him, we'll just move Superman over and bring in his colleague and at times his combatant. This is Batman. Now the figures again are about 8 inches in height. I just have it so that Batman's legs are a little bit more spread, but the figures are on average about the same height to one another. In fact, you could probably say that looking at the two figures, they're probably sharing a lot of similar mold elements that of course have been tooled differently depending on the molding of their costume. But on average, they're pretty much the same style and build of figures from one to the other. Looking at Soup's accessories, sadly, he doesn't come with as many as Batman did. Sometimes when you do get these Dynamic Action Heroes, where the instruction guide is, there's always like an extra baggie of goodies. Superman unfortunately didn't have that, while Batman did. But let's have a look at the accessories that Superman does come included with, and though you really probably wouldn't count this, he does come with his own instruction guide, similar to what Batman had. We open this up. One side is, of course, a different writing. The other side, the side that I will be wanting to look at, are basically just straightforward instructions, just telling you how to move the arms, the different joints and articulation on the figure, how to change out the hands, how to install the heat vision effect, and the fact that the shoulder articulation as well as the leg articulation have those dropout sockets. So we'll talk about that in a second. To come also in the figure, and more talking about now the accessories, he comes included with the same style of stand as Batman, just with a different change of name on the front. So instead of Batman, obviously it says Superman on the front, but the Justice League logo is exactly the same. As well as that, you get the exact same adjustable neck that has a ratcheted joint. You can bring backward, you can bring forward, and you can also rotate this all the way around back and forth as well. This moves also up and down, and you do also have the prongs that go around the waist, just sort of clamping around Superman's waist. Again, I sort of wish that these could be longer, especially for someone like Superman. You would want to be able maybe to put him in a flight pose. You simply just can't do that with this length of stand the way that it is right now. So again, I kind of wished down the road that Beast Kingdom could give us alternate versions of the stand neck. Some a little longer, maybe even one that has some adjustability to it. Something like a posability in the actual neck where you can get them in flight poses. Because as it stands right now, Superman isn't going to be able to do that. Let's put that to the side and have a look at the other accessories that come included with the figure. I guess the main one is his heat vision effect. Sort of this jagged looking thing. It almost looks like it should be the front of an insect. You can see it's got some real jagged sculpt to it. Sort of how it peaks and points out from the sides. It actually does have a little bit of a point to it when you run your finger across it. but it's got some interesting texturing to it. It's all done in clear or somewhat translucent red plastic, as you can see right there with my hand running behind it. Basically, all you need to do when it comes to Superman's head sculpt, I'll grab it right now, is you're just going to take this, and there's this little kind of notch in the middle here where the sculpt is on either side of it. It literally just fits onto the bridge of his nose, just like that. And it's more than enough. It's more than enough to actually keep it in place. You could do the blizzard test if you want to. The heat vision isn't going to be going anywhere, and it does give a little extra something to Superman, especially for the fact that his mouth is sculpted the way that it is. Now, obviously, you could just leave it off completely, and they still haven't sacrificed anything on the head sculpt. We'll talk about all of this in a second. I'll just put that back in place for the time being, because we'll talk about his head sculpt in a second. I just wanted to also show you the other accessories he comes included with, and that's basically just hands, just a whole bunch of different hands. Grabbing hands, if you like the idea of Superman grabbing and mauling somebody, he does have the option with a couple, like I said, of grabbing hands. He does come with also a pair of relaxed hands. Not necessarily I would consider flight hands, but just more or less relaxed hands with all the individual digits spread out from one another. And then also he comes with a gripping hand, which is somewhat ironic because he actually doesn't come with anything he could technically grip. I'm wondering if maybe they had decided at the last minute not to include any other accessories, because it does seem a bit strange that Supes would come included with gripping hands, when again, technically, there's nothing really that he can actually grip onto. Let me just quickly show you how to change out the hands, just in case you're curious. It basically just sits on a ball joint. Now, I find if you pull the hand out, it usually pulls all the joint with it. Instead, if you pull it and sort of pry it away from the ball joint, almost like you're peeling back a peel of a banana, and you sort of just fit this back in place. Peeling the peel of a banana. What an analogy to use as a comparison. But like I said, all we're just going to really do, this fits back in place. It fits actually a little tighter than it does to remove it. In this case, it actually helps to twist the hand while you're putting it back onto the ball joint. And you can basically just change out the hands that way. Just before I go ahead, though, and remove the heat vision, I also want to show you that it only goes one way. If you look at it, in fact, let me just pull it off for a second. If you look at it this way, it actually is concaved. It's beveled inward. If you look at it this way, this is the top of it. You can't really flip it the opposite way. It just doesn't stay on Superman's face well enough. So when you are putting it in place, you're obviously going to want to have the more concaved shape facing down. And like I said, it's just going to fit against the bridge of his nose. It's more than enough to keep it in place. I've had a couple of times where if I banged it and if I wasn't too careful, yeah, sure, it fell off. But it does stay well enough on his face if this is the desired look that you want to go with. I'm going to go ahead, certainly for the sake of the sculpt of the figure, take that off just so I can show you guys the closer looks at Superman's face. Now, arguably, you could say, well, it's hard to really pose as Superman like this because he's always going to be angry. A valid point. I would say the same thing myself. Now, we did get a couple of Supermans before this, so in actual fact, you could just pop the head off and use the different head sculpt if you want to use it with this body, for example. But this is a good, decent-looking Superman, certainly if you like the idea of Superman being angry. An interesting touch that you really only see by close inspection is the fact that the center areas of his eyes are actually stars. Fancy that. I guess what they wanted to do is they wanted to have the pupils looking like they were bursting and shedding out light. And the end result of it is, again, he's got stars for eyes. Look at that. I do like the airbrushing that they added around the areas of his eyes, where you would imagine, of course, like we've seen in the film, when he's shooting and blasting out his heat ray vision, that it sort of runs its way through its skin, and his skin almost becomes paper thin where you can see straight through it. So it's a nice touch on Beast Kingdom's part to kind of airbrush that area around his eyes, just so it looks like his face is glowing that as well. The teeth are a nice touch, although again, if I look in the inside of his mouth, and I don't want to draw too much attention to some of the nitpicking on this figure, but it does seem like the interior of his mouth isn't painted pink. I mean, it just looks like it's the same color as the rest of his skin. Maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me, and his tongue is actually painted pink, but it does seem like it's the same color as the rest of his face. As for the rest of the head sculpt, of course, this is an angrier expressioned Superman, but I think it still does look a pretty good likeness to Henry Cavill, of course, who played Superman in the film. The head sculpt on the hair as well is also decently applied. It does have a bit of a shine to it. I mean, it usually is the case when you sculpt these figures' heads out of plastic, that a lot of times it usually results in the hair being shiny, and that's no different here for Superman. He does have a fair bit of articulation, but we'll talk about that in a second. Instead, what we will do is scroll further down on the figure to have a look at the Superman costume, primarily from Justice League, which is a little more of a shinier looking suit. It still has that sort of armor linked that he has on the previous costumes, just again a lot shinier. Hopefully the camera is picking that up. There we go. You can see how those interlocking links sort of make up the pattern work for Superman's costume. In addition to that, of course, he's got the Superman emblem that's lifted and raised from the rest of the costume, so that's a nice touch. Some silver accents there on the sides as well as the areas on his forearms, and he does have the noted gold area on his belt. The sides and the center sort of rectangular belt buckle that he has. The lines continue their way down, and I feel like the silver may be too obtrusive. It sticks and stands out a little bit too much. I think actually in Justice League this comes across more like a darker blue, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and watch that again. I don't feel it's silver, and even if it is, I don't feel it's as bright of a silver as what they actually are conveying here on the figure. As I've moved it away, I can kind of focus some efforts looking at talking about the cape. The cape is a stretchy material, as you can see. It's got a wire frame, so basically it's a wire from the top of his shoulder and runs all the way down to the bottom of the cape. So this whole area allows you to manipulate it if you want to bend and move it around. If you want to have Superman in a more dynamic pose, let's just say where the wind is blowing it up, you could sculpt and manipulate the cape to do that. And I always like when companies put wire frames in their capes. Why not? Why wouldn't you? It allows collectors to display the figures and display the capes the way that they want. Even though I do feel the costume may be a tad shiny, it has been well painted to the credit of Beast Kingdom. I mean, from top to bottom, even when we get down to the boots, I do like the coloring that they went with, even though I do think it's a little too shiny for my liking. I mean, even the detailing done to the boots, where the boots are obviously a different red than his cape. Putting the cape next to it, you can see what I mean. The coloring is almost more of a warmer pink with a banding of red along the top area here. I really actually like this color of red. Well, I do feel, again, like the blue may be just a little on the too shiny side. Looking at the figure's articulation, though, the head rotates all the way around. It's got a ball joint at the top where it attaches to the neck, attaches to the head, I should say. And then for the neck, it's got a secondary ball joint. So it allows a range of motion not only from Superman's head, but also for his neck as well. The torso does have a ball joint, so you can move that around all the which ways. This way, you can tilt it side to side. Obviously, any bit too far to the extreme, you'll start seeing a big developing gap there. So you may want to just sort of fix that so you don't see it. I know one of the things that people comment when it comes to Beast Kingdom releases is that the bodies do come across very sectional, like things just seem like they're floating away from themselves. And I get that. I mean, when it comes to the shoulders, for example, yes, there is a noticeable gap. But the thing to also keep in mind as well is that these joints right in here, there's a cup socket joint that actually retracts out, allowing for Superman to get a little bit more range on his arms. This technically actually pushes back in, and you can just bring the shoulders much further into the body, so those little gaps that people mention aren't as noticeable, providing, again, you bring those arms closer to the body. The whole idea is that these arms are supposed to be able to give extra movement, and that's the whole reasoning why these joints bring out or pull out a little bit more than normal. The arms do rotate all the way around. You can, of course, like I said, hinge those out perfectly fine. He does have a swivel on the biceps section, but it's really tight on this figure for some strange reason. Actually, on both biceps are really tight. This one just is, there we go, just really, really tight on the bicep joint. He does have a bend in the elbow, which allows also the forearm to rotate back and forth, and he does have articulation in his hands back and forth. Bring those arms back in. Bring those arms back in. Now let's have and focus our efforts here on his legs. Now his legs split out, so you get a good full splits on Superman's legs. In addition to that, they can move forward and back, and like with the shoulders, you can actually bring down these legs. See a big noticeable gap there? That just allows for additional movement on those legs. But again, when you're done, you just push those back in. Push those back in. Superman, in addition to that, has a swivel cut on his thigh, but like with the shoulders, I got them really tight on this figure. I would prefer to have tight swivel cuts on these figures than have really loose, floppy legs, and luckily Superman doesn't have that. What he does have, however, is a double hinge on the knee, no articulation on the boot at least, but then when it comes to his feet hinge up and down. You can rock him back and forth, and he does have toe articulation as well. A decent looking Superman. Please, oh please, don't let the turnoff on this guy be his expression, because again, if you have another one of the Beast Kingdom releases of Superman, you could just swap it out, as they use the same ball joint. And where is Batman? Where is Batman? Let's bring in Batman one last time so we can put the two together. I do like the newer released pieces here from Beast Kingdom. I know some would argue, yes, the joints, like the arms, the legs, for example, sometimes do look like they form gaps. They create gaps where they're not quite attached to one another. But again, you sort of can bring those in, push those in so they don't show as much. The Batman and the Superman do look nice. I do think Superman's costume may be a tad on the shiny side. Overall, I do think that these are nice-looking pickups, nice-looking pieces that are definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of the dynamic action heroes that Beast Kingdom are producing. Despite for not so subtle of an expression Beast Kingdom sculpted on Superman's face, overall it's a good-looking figure. And even again, I don't mind at all that he does have the anger expression, because this marks now, I think, the 4th Superman that I've picked up from Beast Kingdom. And some have neutral expressions, and some, like this one, have the anger expressions, so I've sort of got the best of both worlds. This one also inherits the more metallic costume, which sort of is a bit off-putting, just because I find it's a little too shiny. But truthfully, I didn't really like how shiny the costume looked in Justice League either, and I get why this one had to be shinier, because, of course, it had to look closer like its film counterpart. This one does have a decent amount of articulation, and I'm never really going to fault the company for producing these figures for having so much articulation. The expense of that is the fact that sometimes they do look like they have sectional joints. I know that's one thing that people comment on when it comes to the Beast Kingdom releases, that sometimes it does look like their arms look like they're just floating away from their bodies. But keeping in mind, again, those sockets do pull out for a greater range of motion, and you can also push them back in. I have it a little bit further out here for this particular pose, and speaking of this particular pose, I really wish that this could also have come out with a longer neck. Because really, for the expression that they have on his face, I would like to put him in a flight pose, but unfortunately the neck just won't allow that because it's not long enough. So maybe moving forward, if Beast Kingdom to incorporate 2 versions of the neck, a shorter neck for straight out standing, and a longer neck if you want to put them in more flight dynamic poses. Just a little bit of advice on my part. What do you guys think of this line? Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of the dynamic action heroes of Justice League Superman. If you've either picked it up for yourself or based on this review and this review alone, let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the figure. And if you're also new to the channel and you're digging all the content that I'm doing on a regular basis, and let's just say you haven't had a chance yet to hit that subscribe button down below, don't postpone any further, my friends, because I will like to consider you all my friends. Hit that subscribe button down below, turn that bell notification on, and as always, keep those peepers peeled, because there's going to be a ton of new reviews coming your way Monday to Friday at 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wait a minute. Somebody's putting up their hand. Yes, that is. It is 10 videos a week. 10 videos a week. Monday to Friday, 2 videos a day gives us a total of 10 videos a week. Astronomical. Anyways, stay tuned, members of the mob, because there's definitely going to be lots of stuff coming your way. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.